Hello and welcome to another video in this series which aims to get you started with some of the basic functionality of Fantasy Grounds Unity. So in this video I want to have a look at some of these tools, not all of them, but just some of them. Something I forgot to mention last video as well, by the way, is that if you don't or if you want more room on your desktop, you can click this button down the bottom here, which will sort of hide part of this toolbar. And if you click it again, then it'll hide it even more. And you can then just click it to get it back to where it was. I digress. So we've got a few tools up at the top here. So first is the combat tracker, and we'll cover that in its own video. And the second is the party sheet, and we'll cover that in another video as well. So the third one here is the calendar. So this is where you can set up a calendar for your game. If we click on modules here, and then we just type in calendar, we'll get the calendars module. You might have more calendars modules in here, but this is the official one from Smiteworks. We're going to load that, and then we're just going to close this window here, and we will see that we have a choice of a number of calendars. Now, just a couple of points about this window in general and any windows that you see in Fantasy Grounds. If you click and hold in the title bar, then you can move the window around. You can see that down in the the right hand corner here, you can make the window bigger or smaller depending on how you like it. And a vital piece of information is this little query icon up at the top here. And if you click on that, it'll give you this, just say yes. And this is going to take you to the wiki page, which is related to the calendars. And the same applies. So this is the wiki page for the calendars, which will give you more information. And you can see this in any window that you open. You'll see this little query icon. So if you want to know what or more information about the window or what you're looking at, then click that and it'll take you to the wiki. In the meantime, I digress again. In the meantime, we want to set up a calendar for our campaign, so we'll just pick up any one of these. It doesn't matter which one. We just double click on it, and it'll now set the calendar for our campaign. So we close that and click that. We see we now have the calendar. We can type in a year here, whatever year you want, whenever your campaign is starting. And you can also set the time. If you hold down the control key and move the middle mouse button, you can set the time up and down to whatever you want. You can then click on one of these dates here, and if you click this little icon here, it says set selected date as current date. Click that, and we now have the date that your campaign is going to start on. You can see two little chat icons here. If you click this one, this will put the date into the chat, and if you click this one, it'll put the time into chat. Additionally, you've got the add log entry here. If we click this button, this opens up a dialog, and you can add in information in here. You've got GM information and you've got player information. The players won't see anything that you type in here, so you can type in all sorts of things as GM to keep track of the story or whatever. And if there's stuff that you want your players to know or what happened or whatever, then you can type that in here. Your players will see this calendar in their screens, but they won't see any GM entries. Once you've placed an entry in, we'll put something in just to show you this. Once we've put something in, then you'll see there's a little icon on the left of the number of the date here to show that there is an entry. And you can go to view log entry for any particular date, and you can also click on the all logs button to see what all the logs are. So that's the calendar. The next button here is colors. And if we click on that, now you won't see this unless this video or you're watching this video after 4.3 hits the stands. But this is where you will select your dice and any dice packs that you have purchased. Um, if you haven't purchased any dice packs, then basically all you're going to see is the default dice here. Um, this is basically these dice down here, and you'll see that there is a little palette icon in the top right of the little icon here for the dice. This means that you can color this dice. So down here we've got black dice at the moment. If we click on the body, we can get this color picker. And if we click around in this thing, then you can see the dice changing to whatever color you have currently selected. And once you've done that, then you can click on the text. And again, if we move around here, you can see the text changing on those dice that we have made. Now, the Dungeon Master and each player can set this independently. Everybody can have different colored dice. You can set them to your heart's content. But if you've got these dice packs here, well, then you've got all sorts of different things. You can see it down here now, whenever I select different ones, the dice are changing. We're getting little icons on the dice. We'll get little sort of extra uh, patterns are coming up and all that kind of thing. And there's a whole pile of these which you can pick. And some of these as well, like the metal ones, also have the little icon, the little palette icon. So when you click on these, you'll get your palette icon, so you can have a high polished metal looking dice in whatever color you like. Most of the rest of them don't have that availability. So that's basically the dice box. The color pointer is something which we won't go into too much detail, but you can change the color of your dice pointer here. Or your pointer color here, and that's the pointer that you would use on the map to point something out. So normally, previously, the pointer color would be the same as your dice color, but now that's changed in this edition, or in this update, and you can now have an independent pointer color different from the color of the dice. So that's the color palette. We next have modifiers. If we click on this, we've got various buttons. So if a dice roll is being made and you want it to be critical damage, you would click critical and then roll the dice, and it will roll the appropriate critical dice. If you wanted to be maximized or half, then you do the same. You click this button and then you would roll the dice, and it'll take the maximum amount of damage, or it'll take half damage. And these buttons are for opportunity attacks, cover and superior cover, and the +2 minus or +2 +5 and -2 -5 kind of are similar to the cover superior cover down here. You can also add modifiers yourself, custom modifiers, and again, if you see, this will be a common occurrence in many screens and many of these windows. You will see two little icons down the bottom here. The green one is to add an item, so you can add in a custom modifier, whatever you would like in here. You can just type the thing in, whatever it is. I don't know what we'll have. Super cover, and you might want to give that, I don't know, a 6 or something like that as a bonus, whatever you want. And you can type that in and you can have that as a custom modifier. And when you then click on this little icon here, it'll apply that bonus or that modifier to whoever is rolling the dice, and it'll add in that 6. The little edit list button here, if we click on that, we get these little red icons, and we can then delete these. And if you see an eye icon here, then you can click that to hide this fact. So when you apply this custom modifier, then your players aren't going to see it. If the dice icon is showing, then the players are going to see it. So this is another common symbol that you'll see in many windows and many dice roll, or opposite many dice rolls, is you'll see this little icon, and if it's grayed out, the players can't see it. If it's lit up, then the players can see it. So we'll just use this little button here to get rid of that. And then we'll go on to our effects button. And again, we see we can set up custom ones here. You can also use this to search for, particularly if you've got a long list here, then you can use this search box to search here. These are various presets for lighting, which is a whole separate issue. I'm not going to cover it in this video, but basically these will add candles, lamps, or whatever in the presets that comes with Fantasy Grounds onto a particular character. You then have all the conditions, which are basically all the conditions in Appendix A of the player's handbook. And we'll see more of this when we come to look at the combat tracker, but we can apply an effect or a condition from here onto an actor on the combat tracker when it's their turn. And these do what they are supposed to do. So if somebody is blinded, for example, then I believe they get disadvantage on attack rolls, and people get advantage on attack rolls against them or whatever. But all of that is kind of built in. So these are where you would apply these conditions if they're not being applied from somewhere else. And as I say, you can create your own custom conditions here as well. And then we look at the options. Now again, the top half of this, all these options up here, it really deserves its own video, maybe even two videos. But let's have a wee look at the buttons down at the bottom here quickly. The background decal, if you click on this button, then it will load in all of the decals that you have on your machine. Now it very much depends on what DLC you have purchased, etc., as to what decals you have. You can expand this window as whatever. And the decal is essentially this part of the screen here, the bit in the middle of the screen. So if I click on this one here, it changes the decal to that part of the screen. If we click on that one, it changes to that. You can also, of course, search for a particular decal, and there is another way to get to it, which is through the Assets tab, but that's covered in a separate video as well. Again, this is paged, so you can click through the next pages or whatever till you find a decal that you want. If we then look at currencies, this is where the currencies for your campaign are stored, and this one is for 5e, so it's the standard platinum pieces, gold pieces, etc. Each piece is given a weight and a value, so um, platinum pieces have got a value of 10, gold pieces, as you can see, gold pieces have a value of 1, electrum have a value of half, etc. You can change any of the figures here. You can make them heavier, you can make them lighter, you can make them worth more or less. You can change the currency type yourself. You can add in new currency types, and you can give them a weight and a value. All of that you can do in your campaign to suit what you would like to see in your campaign. You're not stuck with just what's here. If we go to languages now, this is where we can select a font for the languages. You may remember in the first video I selected an extension to add a bit more fonts. And what we would do here is we've got the Halfling, for example, has no particular font assigned to it. So if we were to click on this drop down here and select a Halfling, and then we typed in something, then it just comes in just exactly how you typed it, including all your misspellings. But if you change this, if you click on this drop down here, and let's decide that Halfling is going to be, I don't know, the Infernal font, then when we now type in something in Halfling, it's shown in that font. So this drop-down menu here is where you select the language that you want to be speaking in. Once you've decided that you just want to go back to the normal, then you just click on the blank one above, and it clears that line. So this is where you would add in your languages. You can add in new languages here. You can then give them a font as well, and of course we've got the search bar as well. Um, Message of the day, probably a very useful tool, I would suggest. This is where you can type in information that you want to convey to your players, and when your players join your game, this message of the day will pop up. There's a lot you can do with this. You can create links in it, you can link maps, quests, all sorts of things, and of course you can type in lots of text. The main thing is that when your players join your game, this is what they see. So you can have an ongoing message of the day. You can change the message of the day for each session, etc. Maybe recaps the previous session or whatever. This little icon here, if you drag a story entry, and we'll come to that later in another video, but if you drag a story entry here, you can then just totally replace whatever is in here with whatever is in that story entry. The setup just takes you to the screen that we saw in the first video when you first start up a new campaign. And the token lights here is where you can set up new tokens or new lights, and where the preset lights that come with Fantasy Grounds are already here. You can add in new lights here, and again, this is a separate subject and it is covered in another video. Right, okay, I think that's enough for this video. A fairly brief and whirlwind tour of some of the tools that you have available and how they function. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers for now.